Good evening, everybody. Welcome to CW Live. My name's Chris Webb, Head of Communications. I'm delighted to be joined this evening by our Deputy General Secretary Postal, becoming every Wednesday event, Martin Walsh. Good to have you with us, Martin.
Good evening, Chris. Good evening, everyone.
So really good to have you with us. We've got, as we've said to the members, the really important subject tonight of later starts, network changes. It's a really emotive one, but we're hoping to get through a good mix of content tonight. So we've been picking out loads of your comments over the last week or so. We've got one or two of you on the show. We've got one or two of our reps on the show. And if we can, we'll take some live comments as well. So it's a real mixture of things going on. Before we started, though, we just wanted to say one or two things. There is a lot going on right now. We have, obviously, you'd have just heard the calling of a general election. We have the takeover bid in Royal Mail. We have the proposals on the table to change the USO. And it is crucial that during that period we stick together and we remember who the real enemy is. And we've been seeing comments on the pages, and it is from a minority of people who are concerned, people who are, say the union sold us out, the union's let us down, the union is weakened, and, we have agreed to every single thing Royal Mail said. Well, we've got to get that right. And we've got to get those people who we know support the union in every single workplace finding your voice again and speaking out on behalf of the union, because we can't have that out there as a credible opinion. Martin and I today were going through Royal Mail's original proposals for change. We'd urge you to go back through that document. And if you genuinely believe that where we ended up was anywhere near that, then that is seriously misguided. Total flexibility, moving to 40 hours on your base pay, taking away all allowances, every single postal worker moving to a 3-hour later start, horrific industry-based standards on sick pay, and moving all of you into the gig economy. All of those things was defeated by you standing together with your union. Now, we are not in a place where on many issues where we want to be, but the only way we're going to get to a better place is by sticking together. And that's the signature tune of tonight's show, is bringing people together to improve things. Now, some of the work that Martin, Tony Booch, Mark Boach, Davey Robertson, Shelley Banbury and others have been doing to mitigate the changes in network times has been absolutely fantastic, and we're going to go through some of that tonight. We're also going to go through some difficult issues and some of the challenges that Martin and the team face and how we're dealing with them, such as Scotland, areas down in Portsmouth and the Isle of Wight, other parts of the country where it's proven to be real difficult. But Martin and the team are going to go through what they are doing to improve things, and they're not going to get there without total unity, without us standing together. So really looking forward to tonight's show. Going to give Martin now the opportunity to set the scene, if you like, on later starts, on network changes, and then we're going to get straight into your questions. So good to have you with us, Martin. Yeah. Over to you.
Good evening, Chris. Good evening, everyone. Really want to cover in some detail around network, because this is a massively important issue for our members, and we want to express how much work we're doing and what we've done so far and what we're going to continue to do. See, regardless of whether you work in delivery unit, whether you work in a mail centre or distribution, you've been impacted as a result of Royal Mail's decision to come off planes. And it is important to remember, ever since they had the Capital Markets Day in 2017, they were always going to come off using airplanes. If you remember, part of their proposal was to move to a 9 to 5 delivery window. We actually balloted for strike action. It was the first High Court injunction we got against us for not going into a mediation process. And part of what Four Pillars actually delivered was it moved the delivery window. It moved the Ofcom delivery last letter to 3:30 to 4:30. And clearly the destination of the company, they were always going to serve notice on airplanes. And I know some people believe unions can stop the company being run, whether that's in any union, but they can't. What we're about is shaping that future, making sure any change, we mitigate that change and we try and get benefits from that. If you look in the past, in the dockyards, containerisation ended in the most crucial way, the jobs in the docks. In the same way, in Fleet Street, technology moved that industry. Royal Mail had made it clear they were no longer going to use planes to carry that mail. And it's for 3 different reasons why they've done that. The first reason, it was more costly, 12 times more costly than going on rail and road. The second reason is that basically quality was being impacted. Years ago, we've just delivered letters. Now those planes are bulked out with parcels, and Royal Mail can't put on extra planes to fly that. That's down to air traffic control, and Royal Mail don't own any more of the planes. And the third issue is the green agenda. Every single carrier is now looking at what they're going to use on the green agenda. Germany have just agreed a change in the USO, so they moved first class to a day C delivery in order to come off planes. So this wasn't a case of the union taking more strike action to force Royal Mail to go on the planes. That was never going to be something any union would have done, and it wouldn't have been achieved. What we achieved, instead of a 3-hour later window, which is what they wanted, we achieved 60 minutes in the vast majority of cases with a cap of 90. And it is important if we recognise the details. And I know sometimes on social media you only hear the bad news. There's been some brilliant work done at all levels of the union in order to mitigate the start times. There's got to be more work to be done for those people still over 60 minutes, which we are still pushing. But out of the 1,252 units, delivery units we've got, 1,061 units are below 60 minutes. And that's a significant move. And if you look at the details of that, 31% of delivery units, 391, are between 0 minutes and 15 minutes. And then you've got 249 units who are 19% of workload, who are between 16 minutes and 30 minutes. And then you've got a further 216 units between 31 and 45 minutes, and a 205 units between 46 minutes and 60 minutes. That's 85% of every single delivery unit which we've delivered on below 60 minutes. And when we look at the start time, so we've got 191 units above 60 minutes, and I'll come on to some more detail of what we're trying to do on that. But if you look at the actual finishing times of our members, there is 88% of delivery units who are finished by 15:30 within that sum. And then we've got over, basically 12% over that time, and we're still trying to mitigate. So when you look at the headlines, we have massively moved the company. Now let's deal with the units above 60 minutes, and they fall into 4 different categories, and it's important people understand why. Scotland, which clearly the amount to mail on the wave 1, because of where Scotland's based, is less than the rest of the UK. For example, in Aberdeen, it's 87%, but it's 79% in terms of Edinburgh, 77 in Glasgow, and I think it's 75 in Inverness, compared to other mail centres where it's 97% on wave 1. And then you've got the stem times, which obviously are difficult, because some of the stem times from the mail centre to the delivery office is up to 3 hours. And you've also got the other impact, which is in Scotland, by and large, they are much more efficient on the outdoor. Some of the delivery spans are over 5 hours. And what that actually means, by moving later, you're also creating a part-time job, because you haven't got as big a span with the last delivery letter in there. So there are massive issues in Scotland which we are working through. We're going up to Scotland to meet the divisional committee next Friday, where there's a joint communication in play which we'll address to the divisional committee. But we commence in, I think it's the 3rd of June, we are going to do a members live session for Scottish CW members. And we're going to take you through all the detail on those 4 mail centres, what the potential mitigation can be, and how we can actually move the start times. We believe we will move some of those start times, and I'll come on to that in a bit more detail in a moment. And then the second element is London and the South East, where I think there's a significant amount of units at over 60 minutes. And the reason, those obviously different reasons to Scotland. A lot of those offices have earlier start times now and are either on 4 or 9 day fortnights, 4 day weeks or 9 day fortnights. And of course, the network changes mean they can't get that work into the offices as early as they currently start. So therefore that start time moves later. And again, there's work being done to try and mitigate that. The third area is the southeast, the Southampton catchment area, where obviously I've got the Isle of Wight and getting work across there, and some Portsmouth, it's quite far down. There has been some good work. Tony Bush, working with the division, had moved some start times and finishing times down there last week. And the fourth area is places like Worcester, Hereford, Cambridge, who are really stem times from mail centres. So Hereford and Worcester are served by Birmingham Mail Centre, and obviously Cambridge is served by a mail centre which is far, quite significant away, and the stem time from there. So there are different reasons why some of those units are over 60 minutes. And then what we are talking around is how do we mitigate those units over 60 minutes. Now, the issue is Royal Mail are very cautious. This is the biggest change Royal Mail's ever delivered. And let's be honest, when was the last time Royal Mail made a change which worked? And they are incredibly cautious around that change. And they've built in some buffers, a 30-minute buffer to protect them. They've instead of going to what is actually on wave 1, they put a 90-10 in most of the UK, and then they built in a 1 hour 26 between wave 1 and wave 2. So we think they are being over cautious in their approach, which is why a post-implementation review, which really looks at whether further change can be done, is mitigated. Now, the other issue we agreed, which hasn't been taken up, but we still believe it is important. Anyone over 60 minutes, if you take a mill leaf, either 15 minutes or 10 minutes between wave 1 or wave 2, you actually reduce your finishing time by either 10 minutes or 15 minutes. And we believe that is something we should be looking at. Certainly when we have the Zoom call, certainly when we have the divisional meeting up in Scotland, we'll be saying that. But it also applies to other people who are over 60 minutes. The third area which we're looking at is around seasonal variations. You would have seen the LTB. I know some people were saying it keeps on changing. We had the opportunity, the last network revision is due on the 17th of June, and the seasonal variations was kicking in the 24th. We believed it was the right thing to move it forward to align with that the last revision, and then have 15 minutes finishing earlier, whilst we're doing the enhanced PIR, so everyone has mitigation who does seasonal variations. And part of what we're agreeing, both in Scotland and the rest of the UK, is what does that PIR look like? How quickly can we act, especially in Scotland? How quickly can we do things? And we're determined to make sure where there is mitigation which is possible, we change the start times and finishing times, and that's why that seasonal variation is there. So it is important to recognise there's a lot of work still going on, a hell of a lot of work which has been going on to mitigate what is a very difficult situation, and something we wouldn't have wanted. But when a company says we're ceasing planes, and in fact they've sold the planes, so there is no stopping the 17th of June, in that regards, we've got to get on with making sure we mitigate some of the issues.
Thanks, Martin. A really excellent and really detailed analysis there. So I think you've done well now to really position the session. But now it's over to the most important people, even more important than you, Martin, which is our members. I just seen in the comments that Al Mack is asking if we're going to get representation on the show from Scotland. Yes, we are. Al, your divisional representative, or one of your divisional representatives, Tam, will be on shortly, letting us know what the picture is in Scotland and having a bit of a back and forth for Martin. So yeah, we're on that. I want to move into the comments that we've collated if I can. So Stephen Waterstone, he makes a really good contribution, as all the ones tonight are, Martin. I mean, Stephen basically is saying how far beyond are you lot? You're powerless to do anything with network changes and later starts is already here. Now, there has been some noise from our members, both. I mean, I think there's been some units already implemented where the changes are perhaps a little bit smaller, but particularly in Scotland, in London, in Cambridge, in Portsmouth and the Isle of Wight, where the big change is coming and it's looming. People saying, has the union left this too late? Shouldn't we have sorted these things out well in advance of implementation?
Look, we have been working, it's not enough hours in a day to deal with some of these issues. But the reason why there has to be a phased approach on this, Chris, is you can't land and deploy 1,252 units all going live on the same day. It would be a disaster. So what we've tried to do is have those ones who are only moving between 0 minutes and 15 minutes up front, and we're scaling them back. The bigger changes do not take place till the 17th. Ones below 60 minutes, really their mitigation is twofold. If Saturdays and Mondays can be proven within an enhanced PIR that they don't need the same time, then they can mitigate those start and finishing times on Wednesdays, Saturdays. But the enhanced PIR will apply to make sure if there is further changes which can happen, then they will happen. Now, in terms of the union being meaningless, if the union was meaningless, you'll be moving 3 hours. That was the proposal. And for 85% of our members, that movement's less than 60 minutes. And that wouldn't have been done if there wasn't a union.
Spot on, Martin. So we've got quite a few questions. I saw one pop up on the chat just now from Lucy in and around the issue of childcare. People saying that the 3 o'clock is a real hard fast cut off. Lucy Wilson there, 3:30 isn't any good for most schools finish at 3 p.m. I think Mark Dolman as well in the comments that we collated made a similar point. If we can put it on screen there, Mark says the only way Royal Mail are willing to help with childcare is by allowing us to only have half awake breaks. So effectively not helping at all. I had to provide my child's birth certificates and prove my daughter is autistic just for Royal Mail to say agree at a local level with your manager. So a complete waste of time, proving I have children with autism, and the only option Royal Mail have for helping me in inverted commas is for me to lose half my break. There is a lot of people in the comments I can see tonight raising, and we're going to come on and talk about the exemption process with one of our reps, Andy, shortly. But a lot of people saying that, particularly in around the issue of childcare, Royal Mail are just not taking this seriously, Martin.
Yeah, look, I think this is a very difficult situation, isn't it? Because, Lucy's point, you would want her to have a mitigation. The problem we've got is by coming off planes, and bearing in mind they can't use trains as reliably as using vehicles because there's 24 weeks of engineering works on most of the train companies, so therefore it's unreliable. So they move that work rail and road, and the reality of the situation, it's going to arrive later into the mail centres, and it's going to arrive later in the delivery units. And Royal Mail is saying quite clearly is you can't have the amount of people staying at the times that they are. In terms of the exceptions process, there is some facts on the exemptions process. In regards, there was 3,930 raised exceptions across the UK, and 39% of them were granted, and that varied. Scotland had the least granted. I think it was Scotland stood out at basically 18%.
On that point, Mark, I'll just interrupt you. Is that not further, if I'm a member in Scotland and I already feel aggrieved, is that not further evidence that Royal Mail, are almost just not taking our members up there seriously, or almost punishing them? I mean, obviously we've got the network issues in that, but surely that can't be right. Surely there's no difference between the validity of a member's issue in Scotland than there is in England, Wales, Northern Ireland, or elsewhere in the UK.
No, and I agree with you, Chris. And this is what we're raising with the company. Yeah. So you look at the Angler sort of rod area, 66% were granted, and then you look at Scotland, it's 18%. In South Central, it's 50%. South East, it was 56%. Southwest, it was 23%. So the range
it's not right.
is too much, and that's part of what we're taking up. But the important bit, and I understand some people might have thought, well, I'm not going to get an exceptions, I'm not going to apply, is only 3,930 out of 110,000 postal workers, but 66,000 delivery workers actually applied.
Yes, it's big numbers, isn't it? And really good. I think hopefully the members in Scotland, we're going to have Tam on shortly, will be making their feelings well known on that. Next up, we've got Adam Gardner. I think he sent a comment in, so we can see that on screen. It'd be really useful for me. Talking about how will Royal Mail deal with their duty of care and severe risk assessment tools during the peak heat? It's again, I mean, whether it's the peak heat, whether it's delivering in the dark, safety is rearing its head. Martin, have you had any sort of negotiations, discussions with the company on that?
Yeah, there's a couple of things we were only discussing today, Chris. I mean, and I was at an AGM on Sunday where a female member said, look, we are going to be delivering later in the day in terms of the heat. Our uniforms need to change. A variety of things needs to happen. I think also the concern is especially in parts of Scotland where it gets darker in the winter quicker, is basically how they're going to be delivering in the dark. Now, bearing in mind, if you look here, there are, I think, between 1501, so there's around 69% of people who will be completed before 3:30, but there's a significant amount of people who's going to be ending up delivering in the dark, especially during the 5 weeks of seasonal variations, and we're going to have to make sure on health and safety, risk assessments and everything else, our members are being looked after.
Thanks, Martin. Spot on. I want to come on to a comment, if I can, from Ed Spear. It's around finishing over 60 minutes. So Ed Spear says, our office in Pensford, Bristol, and our sister office, Poulton, but the start times moved to the maximum of 1.25 hours, even though prior to that, they've already been pushed back again. So it's just that double sort of jeopardy thing that we've been discussing before the show. Says the reps have tried to help, but there's another rural office, as far as Ed thinks of it, that's been thrown under the bus. I mean, some of these changes you talked about, in sort of areas of Scotland, and you've given some rationale, but in a place like Bristol, where I think in the majority of cases they've been able to mitigate the change, it's worrying to see Royal Mail refusing to move under the 60 in those offices, surely.
Yeah, and happy to take some of these units up, and we could explore it more with the branch and divisional reps. But the reality is those offices, and there was a number of them, when Royal Mail imposed revisions, they imposed changes to start times, and they've been reluctant to change them, and then they've given them later start times over and above the original imposed start times. Part of the PIR must be in a position where, if that's not needed, we can start moving starts and finishing times back. Now, we have got a set of words on the PIR, and we're also working on enhanced PIR in Scotland because of certain issues which will come to light next Friday when we meet the divisional committee. But what's important here, I've heard people say, well, PIRs don't really work. I think what we're committed to, and I think that the new CEO and the new COO are definitely committed to a new approach and making sure if the data actually shows you can move start times and finishing times, we will do that. And the important bit is that seasonal variations in the meantime will mitigate that start time during the summer by 11 weeks whilst we're carrying out the enhanced PIR.
Thanks, Martin. I want to come now to comments around lighter days, Saturdays, Mondays. So we've got Paul Wanless, I think is the first comment that I want to take a look at, which is Paul saying, Saturday's a massive issue for myself and members. Are the union still in discussions to try and improve Saturday times and finish times, accepting that later starts generally are here to stay? And I think Dominic Nicol makes a similar point, but Dominic also adds in Mondays as well as sort of a lighter day. So my point to you, Martin, overall, really. So we've seen, obviously, we seem to, and I don't want to generalise here, but we seem to have an issue around childcare in the week, totally understandable. But then at the weekend, you obviously have family friendly, you have quality of life. You know, I went down to the Portsmouth picket line during a dispute with General Secretary Dave Ward, and Dave was, we were greeted there really well, and the members were absolutely fantastic. And it was a big office, a few hundred people, and there were literally dozens, if not hundreds, who had season tickets at Pompey, Portsmouth Football Club, and they're not going to be able to get to see the game. And that is not an insignificant part of their life, and that's the case. One of the massive issues that's been raised up in Scotland, we know, is about that, and right across the country, whether it's sport, leisure, family time. I mean, and I did a podcast with Mark Boach, our national officer, and Tony Booch. Tony, by the way, is in the comments tonight, working like a Trojan, getting them people replied to, so thanks, Tony. But both Mark and Tony were making the point that at that point Royal Mail had agreed effectively that those days were lighter, so therefore we shouldn't need blanket finish times. We should be looking to adjust the workload and get people away where we could on the Saturdays. In your election, if I can challenge you in the most friendly way, you made it clear you were seeking more Saturdays off for members. Where are we on that issue?
Okay, let's deal with a couple of things. I think you need to recognise that this system isn't in place yet. The 17th of June is when the planes cease, and once the mail centre realignment, revisions, distribution come in, you will see a difference in terms of your arrival plan on both Wave 1 and Wave 2. In terms of start and finishing times, we pushed the company on both Mondays because, as you know, there's no sequencing, Wave 2 sequencing on Mondays. And we don't believe there is any need to move people later on a Saturday. And at the moment, they are only saying they want to review those two things within the PIR. We think that will prove our case. But the other thing, Chris, we are in talks with the company around a change to the USO, the optimised delivery model. And that does mean all the modelling we're looking at, it means 39% of Saturdays off for people. And what we're trying to model, and we will try and trial, subject to Ofcom, in a number of areas, including England, Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland, the opportunity to introduce the optimised model, which will remove Saturdays for about 2 in every 3 we've worked it through.
Thanks, Martin. Spot on. I want to move on now, as well as introducing our first guest on the show. I want to move on to the issue of the exemption process formally. I think Gav had something to say. He contacted us earlier in the week. So Gav says that every single application for exemption I've heard of has been completely rejected out of hand. Not quite sure where Gav is based, but I mean, some of the stats that you read out there with the sort of imbalance across the country may suggest where Gav is coming from. Joining us now on the line is one of our fantastic reps, Andrew Marriott. Andrew's a rep at Southport Delivery Office, who also has some views, and he's been just sharing them openly on the exemption process. Andrew, if we can get you in, I want to say welcome to the show. First of all, really good to have you with us, mate. What's your question or what you want to cut across to Martin, my friend?
Southport had 14 applications in the exemptions process. Everyone was rejected. 11 appealed, and they were all rejected as well. 3 had medical evidence and recommendations to accommodate them for their health, but yet still refused. So why would they ask for that evidence in the first place? Staff with children with disabilities weren't even given any consideration. I feel that it wouldn't have been a big ask. 14 applications out of about 120 staff in Southport. I don't think it would have been a big ask to work through and accommodate them. I feel that the management leading up to before any applications they seemed like they could manage it, and that we had conversations how we would like to manage it, but we never got to have those serious conversations because it was taken out of their hands. Managers locally weren't allowed to make those decisions, which I've actually got proof of that, which Mark Walsh is aware of, and I think you may be aware of them as well. One manager accepted one girl for the process, saying that he will accommodate her. Within an hour, he was told by a more senior manager that he had to take that acceptance and give a rejection letter. That manager had no idea how Southport run, how they were going to accommodate her. It was just, you can't accept her. So it's Royal Mail wants to be greener, and so they're being environmentally friendly at the expense of being very family unfriendly. And at a time when, like, we're constantly seeing on the news about child poverty, they're putting lots of members in the position where they've got to choose between looking after the child or having a job. Like, I think the union should promote that Royal Mail are being very family unfriendly, and also maybe lobby these groups that want to improve the welfare of children, like in the home. It's not going to help people having to jack in the jobs to look after the kids.
No, Andrew, brilliant. I'm going to come back to you, but for some wider views, I think it's an excellent contribution and a really passionate one there. And I'm sure the members at Southport are really proud that you've got on the line and you've made that. Martin, a lot for you to digest there. Any feedback for Andrew?
Yeah, I wouldn't disagree anything he said. And in fact, I haven't got any information from myself. Like, I'll speak to Mark Walsh tomorrow, but it does seem if what you're saying around Southport and the refusals, and also that one was agreed and then pulled, more than happy to take that up with senior management, because that's not acceptable. We're hearing that in a few other places. I know in Streatham there was a number of accepted and then they were pulled by the rod. So we will take those up. Look, the reality of the situation is, if you've got an exemption and you've provided that and it's reasonable, there should be a plan within the union to allow it. Now, in the northwest area, rod area, it's lower than the average. 34% were granted out of 443 which were applied. But clearly there will be offices in there which have blanket refusal, and we're more than happy to take those up. So if you get that to myself, and I'll speak to Mark Walsh in the morning to see where we got to on that.
Andrew, do you want to come back in?
Yeah, Mark Walsh did discuss it with Royal Mail HQ, and they just made the excuses that the manager didn't follow the correct process in giving the permission. But yet again, I believe all the applications in Southport were just blankly refused, and the generic letter that come with those rejections, for me, proved that. And I'll say that I don't think it would be a big ask to accommodate the whole of the people that applied, because, like, you just need to sit down and work with myself and the managers, and I think the managers were willing to, but they weren't given that opportunity.
I I agree.
Thanks, Andrew. Brilliant contribution. Do you have anything you want to put? Anything else you want to put to Martin while you're on?
No, for now that's it. I've got lots of issues, but like as we're on network exceptions, we'll just leave it at that.
Thank you. Thanks for your time. Thanks for coming on. Really do appreciate it, mate. Thank you. It's a really good contribution there from Andrew, and one reflected in the comments as well, which I know Martin is taking away. I know Mark Boach, Davey, Tony Booch, and others will be picking up as well. I want to move on to an area of the UK that some stunning support for the strike. One of the union strongholds, and has always been like part of the backbone of the CW. Kenny, I think, as a comment for us, will give you an indication of where he's from. We're going to have that one on screen by the team. So Kenny says, Scotland appears, from what I can see, to be a blanket 90 minutes, which we were told specifically wouldn't happen. The exemption process has been a total farce. And I think, if I'm being honest, Martin, when you shared those numbers, I think the numbers back that up. No one understands how it will work, so they've been dismissed out of hand, and the whole thing's been handled poorly. On that note, we have Tam, who is one of our brilliant divisional reps up in Scotland, on the line. Tam, thanks for joining the show. Welcome.
Hiya. How are you?
I'm really good. Good to have you with us, mate. You've been working with Martin, with Mark, with Tony and others on the process up in Scotland. Before we get to the hard work, if you like, that you've been doing, and some of the wins you've had and you hope to have, maybe it's an opportunity for you to put across just how passionate the members up in Scotland are feeling on this subject.
They're feeling extremely passionate, and they feel as if they've been abandoned by Royal Mail. This is change that's being done to them. There's no consideration given to their life out with Royal Mail. It's like an antiquated employer commanding their employees that they will start later regardless of the evidence. Now, Martin, I don't want to have a go at you, Martin, because you've been very supportive. But every time you talk about 85% being within 60 minutes, it rubs salt in the wounds up in Scotland, because that is not the case up here. You'll know, Martin, that Royal Mail approached us to put to individual units to go beyond the 90 minutes, that they wanted units to start between 2 and 2.5 hours later. And I don't want to be critical of Royal Mail Scotland, because I think it's Royal Mail centrally that just don't understand the geography. In Scotland, we have got the most inhabited islands in the UK. We have got large rural and small town populations. We have got 4 mail centres which are quite distant. And this is where I don't buy the green agenda from Royal Mail, because they're taking the flights out and they are saying that rail is unreliable, and they're putting it into diesel trucks, and they're going to ship it in a 6-hour journey for Warrington in the Midlands up to Glasgow and Edinburgh. Now, if they think rail is unreliable, I would suggest they try driving in Britain's motorway network, because all we need is a 10-minute delay in that lorry and the whole plan goes awry. Now, you're right, Martin, in saying that the management team are nervous about the change, and I think they're quite right to be nervous, because there is utter confusion, there's a lack of clarity. Every bit of data that they share with the divisional reps proves to be incorrect. And I was in a unit today, Girvan in South Ayrshire, and the members were saying, well, why can't the union tell us what's happening? We're wary of telling them what's happening, because every time Royal Mail gives us a bit of information, it changes the next day. Now, I know you've been up here a few times, Martin, and you've heard it. There's a great deal of anger up here. I was speaking to a manager in one of the Ayrshire units today. There's maybe 48 members of staff. 7 have told them that they will be handing their notice in when the change comes in. And I think Royal Mail are up for a shock when the network window starts in June, because I think a lot of people will walk away from the business because it interrupts their work-life balance. And in terms of the exemption process, you were there when I challenged the national leadership. 85% of the exemption applications in Scotland were refused. And the manager responded by saying, well, we use the same system everywhere. Well, Scotland isn't the same as everywhere. Our change is having more impact in people's lives. And some of the scare stories, they would shame the management team if they heard about them. Like the parent of a diabetic child being told to give him all his diabetic medicine in the morning so that he could pick him up later for school. It's shocking. It's a shocking way to treat people. I welcome you coming back up, Martin. You'll hear the divisional committee again. One of our divisional reps has been working with Tony Bush. We think there might be the chance of mitigating some of the impact. What we've managed to agree with Royal Mail is we'll use Aberdeen as a pilot area. We have a mail centre agreement, a distribution agreement, and we can judge in reality what the start times will be. And that's really thanks to yourself, Martin, that Royal Mail have agreed that. But it's going to be, I think, an unmitigated disaster. And I would say to you, Martin, the union needs a win. We badly need a win. The membership are looking for a win in Scotland, and we're hoping you're going to be able to deliver that. Not to put you under too much pressure.
Thanks, Tam. I want to come back to you. I want to say to you, though, that it's not Martin that's going to deliver that win. It's Martin, Tam, it's yourself, it's the other div reps, and ultimately it's our members and representatives. Martin, I want to, Tam's, really eloquently and passionately set out the position there now. He's also talked, as you've talked, about work that's ongoing, but members in Scotland are like they're seeing that deadline coming in on them. They're seeing the change coming in on them. What Tam said there about people saying they're going to leave, we're seeing replicated and representative right across Scotland and other areas of the union that are suffering this level of change. I think there's a lot on the line here. If you see, there's no faith in the exemptions process, there's no faith in Royal Mail. People are losing their faith in the union in terms of us going out and campaigning heavily on the maximum change of 60 minutes when we put the deal to them. And of course, it's the culture change that's going to totally change the job, particularly in Royal Mail delivery. We're going to meet them. We're plugging away. We're looking for joint statements. Are we going to get to the 60-minute or below mark for our members in Scotland, do you believe? If we're not, what are we going to do about that?
Okay, look, try and explain that. Tam, and the Scottish branches know, everyone, including yourselves, are doing as much as we can to try and move that dial. We only come off a call, myself, Davey, Tony and Mark, with Jamie Stevenson, Ricky McCauley, earlier today, trying to move and propose some other things. Now, Aberdeen is a good example of this. Their original proposal was Wave 1 would only have 72% on that Wave 1. Now they've confirmed it's 87%. And part of the joint communication we're discussing, that should then allow for a further review on mitigation of start times and finishing times. And obviously that would apply the same logic on Glasgow, Edinburgh and Inverness. Now, clearly, that's not going to move start times massively, but it will move some of them. And that's why we've been looking at what else can happen. So we put something to Royal Mail today. There's no point in me obviously announcing that until they come back and see whether there is it's a realistic offer. There's two things which we've been looking at. The seasonal variations, which clearly is to look at the enhanced review, and the 10-minute meal relief between wave 1 and 2 whilst we do that. If a unit in Scotland adopted at 90 minutes they move to 65 minutes. And we've got obviously then the review of Aberdeen, we got a review of Inverness, we got a review of Glasgow to see whether we can shave some more off, and we got the enhanced PIR during that 11 weeks to see whether we can reduce it. So we have got a plan, but we have put something else to Royal Mail this afternoon, which they are going to consider and come back to us. We want to next week, Tam, and this is we've made it clear, we want to close down a joint communication on Scotland, which we can take to the divisional meeting on Friday, to put it to yourselves. But then the week commencing 3rd, we would hold, in conjunction with Chris, an all members Scottish division meeting where we can explain the mitigation we've made, what's happening, and then for branches and units to address those issues. So we're not running away from this. You know this. If it was easy, we would have done it. But you said it all along, and I think we all said it. This is, if Royal Mail get this wrong, the Scottish Rod, along with a number of others, won't be there. And that's why they're being so cautious in terms of their approach. We believe there's more we can get within an enhanced PIR, because we don't think you need the 90-minute turnaround in Scotland in the mail centre, especially on some of those wave 2s. And there would be some ability to move further start times. But we're working as hard as we can ahead of when we come up next Friday to meet the division, Tam. So my message to all Scottish members is the whole of the union, your divisional reps, your branches, your local reps, along with ourselves, are working as hard as we can to try and get a solution for Scotland, recognising it's a massive issue and it will be a defining issue for some. That movement may well mean they no longer work for Royal Mail, and we put that on the company as well, because clearly we're not going to accept Scotland moving into a part-time industry in terms of not being able to complete the span. So there's a lot of pressure on Royal Mail, there's a lot of pressure on us, but we want to make sure by next week we've got something tangible to come to you, and then we will meet all the members via a Zoom meeting.
Thanks, Martin. Tam, bring you back in on that one, mate, if it's all right.
I just want to be clear that the fault here lies with Royal Mail and not the CWU. As Martin says, I went round units campaigning for a yes vote, and at that time we were talking about a 6:30 finish in some of these units. So the union has managed to mitigate that, but we've still got a lot of work to do yet. But we've got faith in you, Martin, and we'll certainly support you, and it'll be good to see you back up here. You'll
Thanks,
be talking with a Scottish accent before you're finished.
Well, people have loved your accent in the comments, Tam. You're getting a load of praise there, mate, so shows you're doing a fantastic job, and keep going, mate. I want to put one final question, I guess, to both of you, if I can, keep you just a minute or so longer, Tam, is obviously, let's hope we get there via negotiation, and the pressure that, Tam and the other div reps and the area reps, the branches and the members can apply, give you the negotiating hand you want, Martin. But in a world where we don't get there, and let's be clear, Tam set out the reasons, you set out the reasons, where there's a belief that we shouldn't go over the hour in Scotland. I mean, if Royal Mail aren't in a position where they're moving, will the union consider challenging that in other ways, put it on the table, a ballot of our members in Scotland, for example, Martin?
I made that commitment to conference, that if they try and introduce a part-time industry in Scotland, we will ballot the members. We're determined twofold. Part of our USO thing is round, could we change some of the delivery times, the quality times in Scotland to allow earlier starts, and bearing in mind how difficult it is to get all that work up into Scotland at the right times. So we're going to continue to pursue it, and clearly if Royal Mail move towards a part-time industry in Scotland, and something we put on the table would avert that, which hopefully they will reflect on, we will ballot Scottish branches.
Tam, I want to just keep you one more minute to ask you. I mean, you've come on, and I think you've really powerfully, set the scene really, and spoke on behalf of so many of our members in Scotland. So thank you for that, mate. It's brilliant. I wanted to give you the chance to give your message to the managers up there who may be wondering whether they should go that extra mile to, reduce that impact on those finish times for our members in Scotland.
I think if they don't go the extra mile, Chris, they're going to lose a lot of experienced, dedicated staff that are absolutely committed to providing a service to customers. as we did during COVID. For that 2 year period, we slogged the streets delivering the mail. That's the quality of the people that work for Royal Mail, and Royal Mail managers need to acknowledge that. Now, they might be cautious, but we will work with them to make sure that the network change works, as long as you're not displacing people and interrupting their family life. And I'm pleased to hear that we might ballot. So we're going to be campaigning to get the Tories out, and we're going to be campaigning for a yes ballot. And that's right up my street, Martin.
There you go. Plenty of work for you to do, Tam. Tam, thanks, mate. You've been a brilliant guest, and really appreciate you giving your time up. Thank you, mate. If I can now, we've got another guest on the line. Our newly elected, actually, divisional rep in Anglia, Adam Mitchell. Adams, welcome to the show, mate. I think we've got you on the line.
How you doing? Good evening.
Yeah, good to have you with us, mate. Adam, I want to talk a little bit about the things that are going all right. We've heard loads tonight on the network, understandably, on things that aren't going great, and we've just had a really sort of passionate exchange there with Tam up in Scotland. But you, as Div Rep and previously as Area Rep, you've been out and about, you've been trying to win improvements. And Martin talked about the number of successful exemption applications in Anglia as an example at the top of the show. Do you want to give a little bit of detail about some of the work and some of the successes you've had along the way?
I think, first of all, it's important to recognise, prior to being elected as a divisional rep, that I was the area delivery rep in the IP postcode in Suffolk, and that is predominantly a rural area. And some of the stem times from the serving mail centre is up to 2.5 hours. So that has proved challenging at times, and we've always realised that the subject it's always been unpalatable to the membership, because we base our lifestyles and our family commitments around our work hours. And we knew, obviously, that once Royal Mail had given notice on the air network due to the cost and the green agenda, that it was about limiting the impact on our members' lives, and that's been really important. The reps in the division have tried to do that all over. I think it's really important to make a note, as an area delivery rep, I've done this, and I know the rest of the area delivery reps in the division and probably around the country. We started working on this behind the scenes last summer. We were invited to joint working groups with the business, and I'm not going to lie to you, some of the managers that we came up against were just of the opinion, it's 90 minutes in the agreement, and if it's 90 minutes, that's what it's going to be. And we've worked really hard, all the area delivery reps. I have to recognise that excellent work that's gone on to mitigate that damage before the start times were announced in February. And then after start times were announced in February, it then came down more to the local reps to negotiate changes to the longs and shorts to mitigate some of the impact, because every office seems to have a different style of working with their longs and shorts, and some of that had a negative impact on finishing times, because what we've predominantly found is the finishing times that the members were concerned about. A lot of the time it's childcare, and understand that completely. And then when the appeals process was released, we absolutely encouraged everyone to go through the exceptions process, and then the appeals process. And in my opinion, quite a few of them were wrongly turned down. We've had really good success in going back and challenging that at all levels of management, with the local reps and the area reps. We've got a few to undo in the CB postcode that we're trying to do right now. And then we've pretty much got to the bottom of all the exceptions process. I would say probably the worst offices are impacted by around about an hour. Some of the offices in the division are none at all. And then on top of that, we've got a real big emphasis on after deployment. We want to go in there and mitigate it even further, to be quite honest with you. Now, in our division, we've got some offices, like I say, they're really close to the serving mail centre, and they've just got no impact at all. And we've got complete extreme differences 2.5 hours away. So it has been a mixed bag, but yeah, generally speaking, we've had some success. Although I completely understand the membership won't see it as that, because that still means change, and that's been difficult to go through.
Thanks, Adam. I want to stay on the line because I want to come back to you. Martin, you talk a lot about the importance of the union not waiting for things to happen to them and getting out there and shaping change. I think Adam's given some good examples there. And by the way, what Adam's talked about there happens right across the country, isn't it? We've got some brilliant representatives, particularly, some of our div reps have done a great job, haven't they, with the executive and other, local and area representatives. But how important is it that, like, you know, in sort of opposing what Royal Mail are doing, is that we're getting in, we're using their own stats, we're turning their own arguments on them, and we're organising workplaces to deliver improvements?
I think it's crucial because this union could have had a choice. We could have sat back and said, well, you go and take planes off and allowed the company to move people 3 hours. We didn't. We done the responsible thing, even though it was unpopular, was we got to 60 minutes and with a default of 90. And what people are doing, what a lot of people don't see, all the unsung work people do, like Adam, like other divisions, like Tam and Scottish divisional reps, hell of a lot of good work to mitigate start times, which members don't really see. And I would always encourage, if you can shape that change, if you can get in there and you get the support of your members to do that, then you should do it. You shouldn't wait around for the company to do it, because it will inevitably be better if you get in there and start shaping it. Now, it doesn't work out everywhere. There's obviously in Scotland it's very difficult, but in the vast majority of cases there's been a hell of a lot of good work which is mitigating start times to the point where it's not an issue in some places.
Thanks, Martin. Adam, Martin and I don't know if you were on at the start. Oh yeah, you were, weren't you? Talk through this document that was Royal Mail's original plan, you know, which talked about, you know, some horrific changes to terms and conditions that they had planned, and let's not kid about it. It wasn't just their plans; they were going to implement. You know, they were backed and bankrolled by some serious people in the most brutal attack on any group of workers since the miners' dispute. And in the UK, you have been out and about as other div reps and senior officials under the banner of reconnecting in the workplace. I'm sure you've had some challenging meetings, some difficult meetings, but how has the union and how have you been received in getting out there and talking to the members about the takeover bid, about the USO, and about the need to bring people back together?
Yeah, I think with the USO and the takeover bid, it's been sort of difficult conversations because we haven't got anything tangible we can go back to. We're speculating about what might happen, and obviously we're sort of reiterating what the union nationally are trying to achieve if and when these issues happen. What I would say, there is obviously clearly some anger out there still as what people perceive as negative parts of the deal. We, as divisional reps, have gone out there. We was in Luton earlier this week, and we spoke to the members in the canteen, and there was some anger out there about, you know, why didn't we work to rule the money that people lost? And we've tried to reiterate the document that you've held in your hands. We didn't have that with us, but we tried to reiterate and try to remind people of where we were and what Royal Mail were trying to do. Which, you know, my own personal belief is not just getting a completely flexible workforce, annualised hours, all the rest of it, but also breaking up a unionised workforce. And I think, you know, we're trying to remind people in the division when we go about that actually it's only by, and you sort of touched on it earlier, Chris, about maintaining unity, it's only with sort of union membership in high numbers and unity that we're going to maintain the remaining terms and conditions we've got of this job. So we're trying to sort of emphasise and focus on that, but also recognising that, you know, people have a right to their opinion and be angry about certain elements of it, but we have to be realistic about what we can achieve and what we can't achieve.
Yeah, spot on. Have you got any closing messages you want to deliver before you drop off the line, mate?
No, just anyone from any of the reps that are listening from the Anglia division that have been supportive and helpful with the network changes for the members. Thank you very much.
Thanks, mate. Yeah, thank you. Reiterate that. Thank you, Adam. Another excellent contribution. Martin, I mean, we've had some brilliant stuff from the members. We had one of our local reps, Andrew, on the line. He was excellent. Tam spoke so passionately on behalf of the members in Scotland. Adam there outlining some good successes. I think it's been a great show. I think you've done really, really well. Any final messages you want to put across to the members watching?
Look, the message for me is, you know, this is a massive change for our members. And we're going to try via the enhanced PIR process to make sure we can mitigate change to start and finishing times as we move forward. My message to Scotland and those offices are still over 60 minutes. We are still working hard to deliver a better change. And, you know, clearly in Scotland, the seasonal variation, and if units took 10 minutes, if you were at 90, and not every unit's at 90, then you move back to 65. And what we're trying to do with the Aberdeen review and everything else is start shaving some more time off. But the enhanced PIR will definitely be an opportunity to further mitigate as we move forward.
Thank you, Martin. Thank you for your time. I think you've done really well, so detailed there as well, and I know the members will really appreciate that. A quick one for Andrew, who joined us from Southport as well. We've been sent a message from Tony Boots to confirm that Royal Mail are looking at those cases that you've raised in Southport, so well done for coming on and reiterating it, and it is being looked into. We want to say thank you to all the members who have put comments in. We really do appreciate it. Good, bad, indifferent, challenging. It's your right. No other union would even dream of doing this, of like allowing a rep on to openly challenge Martin, or allowing you to put your comments in and then reading some of the most challenging out. You know, it's something that we should never take for granted, the levels of transparency and engagement in our fantastic union. I want to say that, as we said at the top of the show, we've got a general election, we've got a Royal Mail takeover bid coming at us, we've got the USO changes proposals on the table, and the only way through that is if we stick together. If they smell a hint of division, then the establishment, the bosses, the politicians, the city analysts and the billionaires will come right through us. So it is so crucial that everyone gets behind Martin's programme now of re-engaging and reconnecting in the workplace, that every office in the country has a gate meeting and gets itself back together, and that every member does the right thing and sticks with a union. So that's it from Martin, that's it from myself. We thank you all for joining us, and we'll see you all soon.
Thank you.